Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I'm here to talk about Rhys McKee versus Chidi Njokuani. McKee is 28 years old, 13-5 as a pro, and he's given up 1 inch of height and 2 inches of reach to 35-year-old Chidi Njokuani, who is 22-10. Rhys McKee, he's back in the UFC. He initially came to the UFC a few years ago. That's where he suffered 2 of his 5 losses. Then he won 3 fights outside the UFC, all down the stretch in rounds 3, 3, and 4. Got his ticket back into the UFC, and that's where he suffered his most recent loss, a decision to Angelosa. I'll get into his losses here. He's got 5 of them, 2 of them by TKO or knockout, and 3 by decision. He lost to Khamzat Chimaev by TKO. Khamzat mauled him, and he never really had a chance in that fight. Who the fuck would? And then he was also TKO'd by this guy, Tim Barnett. It was Tim Barnett that TKO'd him, and that was a round 1 TKO in the beginning of his career, his professional career. He was kind of tired, even though it was round 1, and it looked like he was just gassed, cornered, and got teed off on until it was stopped. The good news is he got a rematch with that guy, and he TKO'd him in pretty much the same exact fashion, beating him up against the cage inside round 1. But that's it for the times he's been finished as a pro anyway. He's got 2 knockout or TKO losses, and I just described them. And then the 3 decision losses he's lost to Alex Morono and Angelosa inside the UFC, and this guy Terry Brazier, good fighter outside the UFC. And he's been at a speed disadvantage in all of them, Rhys McKee. Sure, he has height and reach over all of them as well, but speed was the difference certainly against Alex Morono. And his wrestling was the difference. The wrestling of his opponents, I should say, was the difference against Angelosa and the guy Terry Brazier. Both of them grounded him and controlled him. And even though he got up and was taking it to the guys, he was still not able to sway the judges. It was too little too late. And he wasn't able to poke Angelosa in the eye either. But that's how he's been defeated. Wrestling or being teed off on against the cage early. I should mention he's been knocked out as an amateur twice, or TKO'd as an amateur twice. One of them I've seen, and it was on the ground after he went for a leg lock inexplicably and then got reversed and pounded from the mount. And the other one I haven't seen, but just know that I know they happened. But Rhys McKee, he's a good, well-rounded fighter. He's got good striking, really typically the longer fighter. Here, I think, is one of the few exceptions of him not being the longer, taller fighter. But he's still got good height and reach, and he makes the most of it. Got good pop in his punches. But Chidi Njokuani's a guy that could take away all that long, tall striking. Chidi Njokuani, like I said, he's one of the few guys with height and reach over Rhys McKee. And also, he's got danger on his side. Chidi's one of the most dangerous strikers in the welterweight division, I should say. He's got 14 knockouts or TKOs and his 22 wins. And we've seen a good chunk of them in the UFC already. Not a good chunk, but a small chunk. But the point is the danger's still there. And I think in this matchup, he's certainly the more dangerous fighter. I think if he loses this matchup, it's because he's the more vulnerable fighter. And I know I just described all Rhys McKee's losses, but Chidi Njokuani's got 10 of them, and he's been finished in 8 of them. And we've seen a good amount of them in the UFC. His biggest weakness, even though it hasn't always shown itself in his UFC losses, is that he's weak on the ground. If you take him down, there have been some fights where he's melted, like instantly, even though they're good fighters, like Andrei Koreshkov. But he's definitely vulnerable there. I mean, Gregory Rodriguez got him out of there. In his last loss, Mika Oleksiejczuk took him out on the feet. And both those fights I just described were fights that Chidi Njokuani was more than halfway to winning by knockout. He got his offense in on all these guys. And the tide turned, and that was pretty much it. He wasn't able to take it. He's a much better hammer than he is a nail. But Chidi Njokuani, I think here he's being given a kind of a favorable matchup against Rhys McKee. I think Rhys McKee, another long, tall striker, striking-based fighter, and Chidi is going to be able to get off on him early. Chidi's got height and reach. Like I said, 1 inch of height, 2 inches of reach. He's also got danger definitely on his side, and certainly speed, I'd say, as well. Rhys McKee, he's not that fast, not as sharp and athletic, but he's slow and steady, Rhys McKee. I think if Chidi Njokuani isn't able to get him out of there, Rhys McKee will pick up the pace and slowly start to take over the fight. I don't know if he'll get a knockout or even win a decision, but I expect him in general to be better down the stretch than I do Chidi Njokuani. And I'm aware Njokuani's looked good down the stretch here and there. And I know way back when he body kicked Alan Jouban before they got to the UFC, before Jouban was even in the UFC. But still, I have doubts about his ground game and his cardio and all that altogether. And to be honest, I don't think Rhys McKee is the guy to exploit any of these holes. Maybe cardio, but even that won't be done in the most efficient way, which is making it a wrestling match and sucking the energy out of him. So I favor Chidi Njokuani to win. I can't say he'd get a knockout early, but the knockout threat is always there. Again, Rhys McKee, unless he was knocked out cold as an amateur, then I've never seen him knocked out cold. And the one time he was taken out standing, it was his first loss, I believe, as a pro. He avenged the loss, and really it wasn't his chin. It was more due to cardio, like I said, in round 1. It was a grueling round, and cardio doesn't usually show itself in round 1, but he was definitely tired and taken out. So, still, I'm picking Chidi Njokuani. I think if his danger isn't able to get Rhys McKee out of there, then he's still fighting a somewhat stylistically favorable matchup that will make him less likely to gas out. So, Chidi Njokuani is the pick. Chidi Njokuani is the bet. And I'll look for the props because in addition to playing Njokuani getting the knockout and the early finish, Rhys McKee, but via late finish, I'll also play because I just have doubts about Chidi Njokuani. That's it. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other videos.